What's up, y'all? I got another little tutorial for you here, and I'm going to be going over the sound that I didn't show in the last tutorial, and I'll go ahead and play this loop so you can hear what it sounds like in context.
They copy my whole fucking flow. Oh, Lord.
Alright, and so in this tutorial I'm going to be showing how to do the last sound that I didn't cover in that other tutorial. Sounds like this. Alright, so going into my patch here, it is a razor patch. It's pitched down 3 octaves. I'll go ahead and turn off all my modulations and effects except for my first oscillator. And so we have it pitched down 3 octaves. The glide is set to auto, which means it will glide when you already have a note on, but it won't glide when you don't. Right, so if you press one when you're already holding one, it glides. If not, it doesn't. That's what the auto does. And then its glide time is, I think, 22.5, and the first oscillator is set to synced dissonance. The ratio is set up 2, so it's the second fundamental. So it kind of gets into that mid-range, and then I just have it turned up a little bit. You can kind of copy that. I'm not going to move it because the undo button doesn't work so well with Reactor, so it won't go back to the same spot if I change it. Then we have a formant for our second oscillator, and by its, well, I'll put them together. No, I won't, because you can barely hear it. So as you can see, it's just adding some of the chunky low bass in that ends up giving some body to this sound in the end. And then I also detuned it from the first oscillator by 24 cents. So I'll turn the first one back on. And then the last sound source I'll go ahead and turn on, which is the safe bass. So that adds my sub note in there. And the one cool thing about the Reactor is for the safe bass, if you turn it on, the fundamental will not be given stereo in the output of the synth. Whereas like it will get if you turn the slope way up. It will give it like side information in all of the harmonics except for the fundamental, but that gives you a nice clean sub bass that's mono if you're trying to get that. So then I'll turn my bandpass filter on, and here's my first big modulation that's coming into this. It is a filter that I have modulated in my playlist. So as you can see down here, I did a little automation, and this is the filter move. So it's basically, as you can see in this little top piece, it's closing that bandpass filter and giving it a nice little yoy, the old dubstep standby yoy. There we go. So it's closing that in. The boost is up a little bit to give it some frequency pushing, and the cutoff's right in the middle. But then the middle here, I will say that like with Razor, it's a very low and low mid heavy synth, so you end up in the processing, for me at least, oftentimes I'm just killing the lows on this because it's so low heavy. Yeah, so that's pretty much all for the first filter, and then we'll go into the Unison. So the speed's turned up, the amount is turned up a little bit, and now we're getting that liquidy type, almost future Riddim type sound to this one. So this bit just basically acts as like the unisono noise changes each of the harmonics slightly differently, almost giving it like a heavy chorus effect, except it's mono. So then I have my only effect on this as far as in the synth. I don't use this effects module. I have a reverb, which is modulated by the amp. So it's gated. Every time the note turns off, the wetness is all the way down. Mid-length decay. The smear's turned up a little bit, which gives a little attack to the reverb. So if I turn it all the way up, you hear how that right? You hear how it's giving an attack to where it takes a second for the reverb to get to full strength. That's kind of what the smear knob does. You can look in the manual and it explains it a little differently, but that's to my ear what it does. And then I have the high dampening pretty much off. So that's giving a little stereo image. And then lastly, the compressor is driven all the way up, middle to low level of release, so it's not the longest release. So then going into our effects here, we have an EQ, a Pro Q3, so an EQ, and as I said before, I'm cutting a bunch of the low mids out, and then cutting a little bit of the mids and boosting the highs significantly. And the reason for that high boost is because I have this low pass 6 dB filter that is being modulated by this EQ, this automation right here. And so by adding that filter sweep, it cuts so much of the highs out that I wanted to go in and boost them back. That way when it does get to the peak, it's nice and bright. Instead of making this I could have did this. I could have made it one of these and turned this up. But you get such a sharpness to it then, and such like a warbliness that I was like, no, we're just gonna boost the highs here and keep this on a 6 dB curve. Right, so it just kind of glues it together better and doesn't make it sound so much like it's affected by a filter. It's almost just like movement into the synth. So then I have let me go back to the first notes. So then I have a compressor, which is really just gluing it together, bringing the volume down a little bit. And then there's a disperser on it, giving it some wetness. And a little bit of low-end beef, mid-range beef. So then I have an OTT, which is gluing it together and making it a little bit more harsh because I'm pulling the mids down, boosting the lows, bringing the highs up a little bit. And it just adds a sharpness to it. Like after dispersing it, which kind of makes it really wet, right? It brings it's like I give it some wetness and then I clean that wetness up and make it a little distorted. It almost just makes it more aggressive sounding. So then I have a transient shaper to take some of that initial off the transient of it. Right? There's a little bit of mid-range pluck that happens that I didn't like. And then once again, like the sound that we end up at this point is a little bit to where, and you can see it in the final result, this second piece is quite a bit louder than the first piece. And then again here, the second piece is brought up, and then again here, the second little bend gets louder. So I used another compressor to glue that back down a little bit, push it down. And then we have a V-clip. The V-clip's just distorting it a little bit. And yeah, for this one, I think the only other thing that I'll show is like how my little yoy knob here does a long yoy, right? I have to turn this filter off to hear all this because I'm turning this. Right, so I go yoy, yoy, long yoy, and then for these I have short yoys again, and then I think I had I only have one long yoy. So then basically when I design this, I have these bands kind of doing, it's like the high pass fades in, or I'm sorry, the low pass goes from low to high, right? Low to high, and then it plucks back down. And then does a little filter sweep here. And I just drew some curves and then picked out the ones that I thought like worked the best for it. Yeah, and that's going to do it for this one, y'all. Hope you learned something. Please do all the things that make the channel grow. That would be highly appreciated. And if you want to see how to make the other sounds in this project, these right here, I did a separate tutorial that I'll put a link for right now. And hope you learned something. I'll see y'all next one. Bye-bye.